You simply suck at Limbus Company, and so do I. Recently, I've been getting a lot of comments about my skill and my legitimacy as a Limbus fan. But I'm here to disprove this with my pro, ultimate, amazing, great, and humble mirror dungeon solo skills. Dude, no. This can be explained, bro. Please, I'm not boosted. Now, this video is going to be a guide on how to make a team for a solo run in Limbus Company. I'm just like the best and most humble Limbus player on the market right now, so you know.
Soldier boy. Also dope 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 boy.
Now, what is the first thing that we'll need to consider when doing a solo run? Yes, what ID we should do the run with. As there is a total of 152 IDs in the game, we've got to go down to one. You know, let's do a summon. Let's see if I get a new one, I'll use him. Just logged in for a final day. Yeah, I got my ticket now. Let's do this. Come on, please don't be a dupe. Don't be a dupe. Come on, dude. Don't be a dupe. Okay, one. We take one. Wow, oh my god, guys, I can't believe it. I got the middle Sinclair as my ID. Oh my god, I'm so lucky. Alright, now that we've got the main ID that we want to use, we must think of a team. What team do we want to be building here? What buffs are the other IDs in the party gonna give your ID? Why should you use it? There are a couple key things that you want to look into when choosing your team, such as the requirements for them. So, for example, Ryoshu, she needs 3 times of envy resonance. So you need to use 3 envy skills on 1 turn to get her buff. So you don't want something for Sinclair. It's like you don't want to use 3 times wrath because you have envy and gluttony skills. You don't have any wrath skills. Don't want to use any 3 times of wrath in a row to be used. You can have 3 times wrath in your ego materials, but not if you need to use them. Because in Mirror Dungeon, you'll be able to get these materials anyway through something like a blue Zippo lighter. Now, that being said, I've chosen for my lineup Ring Yi Sang, Regret Faust, Lantern Don Quixote, Red Eyes Ryoshu, Base Mersault, Base Honglu, Kurakumo Heathcliff, Zwei Ishmael, Base Rodion, Base Otis, and Base Gregor. I have chosen Ring Yi Sang for a support passive that costs 4 Lust, where one ally with at least SP heals 2 SP on hit for every amount of negative effects on a target. This can activate 6 times, yet it can do this twice in a turn. In one attack, Sinclair could heal 12 SP, yet in a round can heal 24 SP. Now, Regret Faust, her support passive, Repression Work, requires 5 Wrath to be owned. And when 5 Wrath is owned, in a clash against the target of the slowest ally has a -1 clash power. The clash power of a target of the slowest ally has a -1 clash if they have 3+ types of negative effects. And as Sinclair is the only one on the field, he will always be the slowest ally, meaning every enemy with +3 negative effects will have -1 clash power. And then for Ego Lantern Don Qui, her support that needs 5 gluttony is almost a must-have for soloing, as it makes it so that ally with the highest aggro skill slot heals 2 HP every time they hit an enemy that targets a unit, which will always be Sinclair. For Red Eyes Ryoshu, again, it will require 3 envy resonance, but allows the ally with the lowest HP and SP to heal 3 SP and HP on that turn. For Base Mersault, it requires 3 sloth owned, making it so that Sinclair takes -10 damage from attack skills. For Honglu, his passive that needs 5 sloth owned makes it so that the ally with the least SP heals 6 SP at the start of a combat phase. For Kurakumo Clan Wakashu Heathcliff, we require 5 Lust, and it makes it so Sinclair will deal 10% more damage against defense skills, or if you're at max HP beforehand. With Zwei Ishmael, it requires 3 Pride owned, where at the start of a combat turn, Sinclair will have his current HP and HP at the start of the last turn compared to each other, and then applies 2 defense levels to Sinclair, depending on how much damage he took. For Rodion, her support requires 5 Wrath, and one ally with the most HP deals +20% damage with heads coins, meaning, once again, it will be Sinclair, because it's solo. Otis requires 5 sloth, and makes it so Sinclair will do +30% damage to enemies below 0 SP. For Gregor, his support takes 3 Pale? The fuck? Gloom. And at the start of a combat phase, it makes it so that ally with the least HP heals 5 HP. This, in total, provides, with all the conditionals met, a total of a baseline of 10 or potentially more HP due to Don's passive, and 33 SP a turn, alongside plus 60% damage to enemies, minus 10% damage to Sinclair, 2 defense level, and giving the enemies -1 clash power, giving insane buffs to Sinclair. Now, before we get into the gameplay, we must lastly understand how our character works in order to utilize him properly. The middle little brother Sinclair is an ID based off Warner, who was introduced in a nocturnal sweeping intervalo. Thus, the ID shares some similarities, mainly in design. The little brother Sinclair is different from other IDs or seasonal IDs because he doesn't share moves with the ID, but this ID does share a status effect called Vendetta Mark, where if Sinclair is hit by an enemy, then Sinclair will inflict 5 Vendetta Mark on said enemy. Similarly, if an ally is hit, that enemy is inflicted with +2 Vendetta Mark, but if that ally was a middle ID, then they inflict +5 Vendetta Mark instead. Now, this status actually makes it so the inflicted enemy takes +2% damage from any middle ID up to 20% more damage. This status is consumed on hit and is also consumed at the end of a turn. If this is consumed at the end of a turn, then the enemy gain the Sibling Vengeance Mark status, where whenever a middle ID hits that enemy, they gain their own respective Book of Vengeance buff on themselves. Now, that's a bunch of keywords, so let me break it down into a much more digestible format. Sinclair gets hit, enemy gets marked, Sinclair punches for more damage, next turn turns into Book of Vengeance, Sinclair punches them again, he gains Book of Vengeance Sinclair with enough of Book of Sinclair, he gets buffs. At 10, he gains +1 blunt damage. At 20, his max speed and power goes up by 1. At 30, he gets +2 blunt damage up. Do you understand that? No? Good. Now, the last thing that we will need to talk about is Sinclair's counter, Warm Up in the East. This counter is easily the best bit in his kit, and what makes him so lethal in his solo runs. Why, you may ask? Well, it's because if you use enough envy skills in a row, then this counter changes its properties. At +4 envy resin, then 2 of his counter changes it into the skill 2. At +6 resin, then 2 of this counter changes into skill 3 instead. This means he will be able to use skill 2 and skill 3 by just using his counter alone. What makes this even more lethal is the fact that this counter normally requires for you to get hit, then hits back, being a non-clashable counter, meaning that we gain the stats effects we mentioned prior. And finally, what makes this counter even better is the fact that it's envy itself, meaning you can just chain the counter together in order to get the skill 2 or 3. Did I also mention that he does more and more damage depending on how much envy resonance he has, and that the counter gives him 30% of his missing HP as shield? Yeah, it's really good for solo runs. Anyway, that was my video on how to build a solo run team. That should give you enough information in order to not only just copy this team to use it in a solo run, but also to get into the harder stages of making a team in general Limbus or Mirror Dungeons, and just better at team building overall and picking your passives and characters way more effectively.